You are listening to Radio Ramadan 365 podcasts.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Radio Ramadan's Reflections, and I'm your host, Zubair Akram, with our respected guest, Sheikh Ruzwan Muhammad. And in this program, we have been exploring the deeper meaning of approaching Quran, and not just as a book that we recite, but as a revelation that we live. And over the past sessions, we've reflected on Surah Feel, kind of unpacking its powerful message, its historical backdrop, its context. And we have explored how the story of the people of Elephant has been presented in the most eloquent manner. And we've reflected, pondered on key terms like tadabbur, tawfiq, and connection of ayahs with each other, and the layers of the beauty of the language, and how to derive meaning from the nuances of Arabic language as well. And just yesterday, in the last session, we started um, exploring the relevance of it, and especially I would in this session, inshallah, with Sheikh Rizwan, we will see if this ayah has any, if this surah has any relevance of the concept of divine justice, Allah's justice on. So there is power, there is protection, and there is justice. We will take a recap of the ayah so far with Sheikh Rizwan, and then inshallah go into this concept of justice and this surah feel. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, surah feel, just a little recap on what we've done so far. To me, the most important thing that I have learned in past few sessions is the concept of tadabbur. So there is a story behind the story. So when you hear or read a story, you are conforming to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he says do tadabbur, by seeking the deeper meaning of the story. And if you're doing that, you're doing tadabbur.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil. Kaida and tadlil, these two terms, what kaida means and what tadlil means. If you can have a little recap on these two, and then we'll continue from there, inshallah.
So do you want to do the recap of the beginning, or from
Yeah, recap of the, I would say alam, recap of the beginning, yes. Alam tara.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So essentially, our initial step into the chapter was to place it in its context of when it was revealed. When it was revealed indicates early Meccan period. Early revelation indicates an opening of the call to Islam beyond the close family of the Prophet ﷺ and the close friends of the Prophet ﷺ into Arab society. And one of the first chapters of that nature, that's of import and importance to the population of Quraysh, and I mean specifically the Quraysh, but also the immediate Arab tribes that came to Mecca, was Surah Al-Fil. So that's the context within which it's being given. And we said the initial context also is directly, in other words, the direct one speaking and the one spoken to is the Prophet ﷺ being spoken to by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which then creates another layer of context. That context is there to provide solace, peace of heart for the Prophet ﷺ. That's the purpose of it, because of the difficulties he is going through and the early community, which is a handful of people, are going through. And in that sense, it's to give solace and tranquility to the Prophet ﷺ, and in the sense that God will protect him, God will aid him. And God gives, in that context, Surah Al-Fil makes sense because it's showing that if you're facing a mighty force, even though you are subordinate and in some sense powerless, in a worldly sense, you will still have the aid of God. So that gives solace to Prophet ﷺ. But we know that the verse wasn't a secret message. It was something proclaimed to the Arabs, and the Quraysh heard it. So the Quraysh were listening into it, eavesdropping into it. And from one perspective, they could right away have said, well, look, God protected our system. You know, we have got other things there as well. So from that perspective, it's in our favor. But if they pondered slightly under the surface, they would realize that what's going to happen here is that they're going to be decimated and destroyed, because in the power dynamics of this, they're the powerful, they're the oppressor, and the Prophet is the one being oppressed. And so if you apply sort of feel from that perspective, it will create not a sense of vindication for them that they're the people who God protected, but rather they were protected then, but they may be the oppressors now. Therefore, God may vanquish them now through divine power, which creates fear. And then we also said another context is now we're looking at it in this age, looking back at the story, and that story is a metaphor for a general idea that, you know, a couple of days ago, you know, you had these attacks. You always have in Ramadan, you have attack of America on and Israel, joint attacks on Iran. Those kind of things, you know, shows that there's a cycle in history where people attack other things, and then it's a question of to what degree do you bring in history to explain the truth of your claim and the truth of your position, and the fact that even if you're weak but you're truthful and you're on the right path, you'll be vindicated at some point. So that's the initial step into it. And Allah essentially is asking people to ponder the Prophet ﷺ. He's asking the Quraysh to ponder. He's asking ourselves to ponder 3 levels. And what is it that Allah is trying to get us to ponder? It's the how of what happened. Not what happened, which is an army got destroyed. Many armies in history have become destroyed. It's saying, look at how it happened, but also it's telling you who did it, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's the how from God, which then ties it in with revelation and ties it in with the history of the Quraysh. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. And so ashabil fil is this, the companion of the elephant, Abraha and his army. But the head of it is an individual who's hell-bent on power, on authority, on essentially wielding worldly power, and he will be vanquished. And then Allah will then, the verse was, Alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil. Did God not turn their plot, or did God not allow their plot to turn into an unraveling? So did God not make their plot turn into an unraveling? Unraveling is tadlil, which is to go like, imagine you swinging something really fast, you let it go like a catapult. You know, these in Palestine, the only thing they have is these primitive catapults, 2 bits of leather or rope, and they put a stone in, and then they twist it, and then they spin it. Tadlil is projected from something. Tadlil is this unravels. So the catapult unravels and it lets go of the stone. So their guide, which is this plot that they have, which is the Tadlil is going to be interesting. It's hegemony over the Arab Peninsula, integrating into the Arabian, into the Roman Empire. All that is part of their kaid, their plot. And it's always on a premise. The premise was the desecration of the church in Sana'a that Abraha had built to indicate his religious authority. And the desecration of that was their it was a kind of excuse. The desecration of someone from Bani Kinana came and did something, and they found it to be disrespectful. That was what we said was the impetus and the pretext. Pretext is always not a reason. You just need an excuse. You know, we say, the person just needed an excuse. So the thing that happened wasn't the reason why they did it. They needed an excuse. It got to a tipping point. And so the tipping point was the desecration of the church. They come, and the Kaid is one small part of the Kaid. The Kaid is the reason, is a small insignificant part of the Kaid. The Kaid is economic power, religious authority, the demolition of any rival in terms of a city in the Arabian seaboard on the western side, Sana'a and Hijaz, that would vie with Sana'a. So it's integrating essentially Arabia into the economy of Ethiopia, Eritrea as a stronger partner. And that was the Kaid, the plot. So Kaid is something hidden, it's something that has steps, but it's also something that is for a specific purpose. It has an aim, a very specific aim, Kaid. So when you're doing a plot, the end game is one specific thing. Like, what's the end game? What's the aim of the strike? If you have a military strike, what's the aim of, if you've got a football game and you're putting a player on as a substitute, what's the aim that person's on for? The aim is essentially at the core of any plot. But Allah says that Allah unraveled that plot. And what we said yesterday, was it yesterday? I said that the Kaid is not the next verse. The Kaid is a deep psychological instability within the mind of Abraha. The moment that Abdul Muttalib, first of all, places in his mind the fact that this house will be protected by God. Because when he went to ask for his camels, he didn't speak about Mecca. He didn't even speak about him attacking Mecca. He didn't even try and stop him, essentially. He just said, look, I've got camels, I need them back. I know you're bloodthirsty and you're power thirsty. I know what you're going to do. You're not going to go back here, so go. But just let you know, there's an entity that will protect the house. And so in the mind, that is starting to create a degree of a doubt, that small seed of doubt, which then becomes embedded and underlined the moment that the elephant from which the army got his name, Ashab al-Fil, the elephant at the head of it, which is called Mahmud, refused to enter into the precinct, into the sanctity of Makkah al-Mukarramah, because that's essentially where he stopped, is essentially at the border of the Haram. So between Mina and Muzdalifah, the valley is still well known. Sayyidina Umar used to when he used to take the pilgrimage, he used to go through it very fast. He used to go through that place very fast because it was a place of adab, it was a place of punishment. So that's what happens. Abraha sees the elephant, goes to see the elephant. The elephant refuses to go north towards Mecca, the few miles that it would take to get to the Kaaba. And at that point, that's when the Kaid starts to unravel, because the Kaid's in the mind. Remember, the Kaid, the plot, is in your mind. And if something else gets into the mind, like a virus, psychologically showing you that this is not a military issue, this is an issue between humans and God. At that point, the way that it physically happens, the way that Allah will decimate them physically, is secondary to the defeat. It's secondary, like the mind game has already been won, and it's not even a mind game; it's deeper, because
so the first defeat or first victory happens in your mind.
Yeah. So when the steps are interesting, the Prophet ﷺ's grandfather Abdul Muttalib, when he speaks to Abraha, he's placed the seed that this is not just a box that we've got idols in, because that's how he sees it. Abraham essentially sees it as a place of idolatry and a place of pilgrimage where Arabs come for their gods. Okay, so he's not thinking essentially of the story of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Even though he's Christian, he's not thinking about that. He's thinking, it's a place of idol worship and trade and commerce. It's like something that for me as a Christian would not be important. He's just interested in the power. And he may well be secondarily interested in the fact that the Christian faith is the faith of the empire, the Roman Empire. But the moment that the Prophet ﷺ's grandfather places the idea in it that there is not the idols that will protect it, it's God, he's thinking, okay, probably like, okay, I also worship God, the Father, in that sense.
Mhm.
But then it still doesn't have substance, does it? It's just a thought. You can dismiss it and be nothing. But the moment that he sees the elephant refusing for no reason, actually, no, you can't think of any reason at all. Like, was a force field there in front of him? Is there, an animal that he hates or is fearful of? Nothing. There's nothing. And so right away, you have the receipts, as they say, or the claim. Like the claim is that God will protect it, and he's given that claim. The receipts for that is that the elephants refuse to move.
Mm.
And at that point, the kaid has been unraveled. It's done. The plot has been undone. The plot is not undone by the physical application of pain and destruction. So I want you to understand that the plot is an intellectual, rational thing, and it has to be unraveled in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So the andalla actually, literally, in a metaphorical sense, it is actually, even though literally it means a camel going astray and running and becoming lost, it actually relates to misguidance, as we know.
Mm.
In our use of it, we say, dalal is like to be misguided. Primarily that's how we now use it. It's a haqiqa shar'iyya, as it's in usul al-fiqh. It's the way that it's now used is for misguidance in the mind, like you're misguided, gumrah, as you say. And so that is the unraveling is done. At that end of that second verse, we know where the unraveling is. It's from the grandfather giving the message that it's not the idols that protect, it's God. And the second thing that will unravel it completely is the refusal of Mahmud the elephant to move forward. And
that's divine intervention. So
that's divine intervention. I mean, the elephant, I mean, the reins of the elephant are in the hands of the elephant leader, but the elephant leader can't lead it. It's led it everywhere. Look, it's led it from Ethiopia over the sea to Sana'a, all the way. If you ever traveled, it's steep land. It's not as if it's flat land. They've struggled and toiled, and the places in there is just flat. It's not. There's essentially no undulation all the way to Mecca. It's basically downhill. I mean, almost downhill. So it's the easy part is now in front of you. The difficult part of going through the mountains regions of Sana'a, Ta'iz, all these areas is past you. Now you're essentially going to have to just walk in victorious. And so the plot which he had in his mind has unraveled in his mind. And so a lot of people, I asked you that. Remember you said that it's the next verse when Allah sends the birds. If that's the unraveling. No, that's how it accomplished. The unraveling's already taken place. The way that the stamp is placed on it is through the physical destruction, which we've not even touched. We've just looked at that. So that's important because I think in this day and age, a lot of people live in their minds, and a lot of things that are done are now at superficial level are mind games. It's communication, it's thought leadership, it's culture, it's so culture is very important, identity. So that's what essentially, you take somebody's identity away, that you've taken them away. It's like they're a shadow of themselves. So I don't know if you know people who were really successful, or then something happened in their life and then they're a shadow of themselves because something got into their head that now makes them unable to do what they used to be able to do. They just became just like a ghost, because in the mind is a block which is now going to make sure that they don't do and achieve what they were able to do before. And that's much more powerful than being in chains, because you have people in prison, in chains. But like Nelson Mandela, for example, let's take somebody who's passed away. So we don't use physical people who are alive. But you can make the analogy that he was in the prison, but because they couldn't break his mind, they couldn't imprison him. He wasn't imprisoned because he was free in his mind. So his
Yeah.
vision and his dream of end of apartheid, for example, lived because they didn't break his mind. His plan was there, and it was absolute, and it was a question of how he did it. But the fact was, he was free because they couldn't colonize his mind, they couldn't take over his mind, they couldn't imprison his ideas. And but if you break somebody's ideas, you break them. You break somebody's confidence, and that's why I think the Ummah specifically cannot be broken, because you cannot break that idea. And that's what I think is really itching at those forces within the world that want to accumulate as much wealth as possible, as much power as possible, as much military might as possible, for nefarious aims to basically enslave the world's population, like this global south. It's not about them. It's about a very small elite, 0.01% of the world's population, essentially siphoning off all the world's resources. And there's nothing standing in their way, I would say, apart from the Ummah, like that sense that there is justice, that there is such a thing as just economy, just international relations. And it's not just talking up the Muslim Ummah or Islam, it's the reality. There's nothing else. I mean, China will still play by the games that brings prosperity. And if that means that they're a vassal of the global elite, providing goods, services, and they become rich in the process, they will do that. They're not a rival in that way. They're just deciding what the pecking order will be. Are they going to be below the oligarchy, that small elite of people? 0.0001%. I'm talking like, it's not even the top 1% in terms of wealth. We're talking about people that want to have control of government, armies, borders, for their own nefarious purposes. And it's not even a conspiracy theory, and that's the funny thing now, because it's not even a conspiracy theory. Governments are struggling to control global tech, global finance, and so the Ummah, the idea, if you break the idea, you break the idea of Ummah, you break the idea of Tawheed, you break the idea of the fact you have a purpose beyond yourself. You've broken the Ummah, and if you don't, you've not broken it. And I don't believe at all that the Ummah is broken in that way. In fact, it's a thorn in the side of that 0.001%.
We have reflections with Sheikh Rizwan Muhammad. Surah Feel is what we are reflecting on, exploring the meaning and finding its context and its relevance with us today. Sheikh, shall we? I would say this is a shorter session today. I'm not going to take an ad break, and we will continue with it so this session will be another 15 minutes or so, where we will. I want to continue with this concept that you've just given, that the first defeat happens in your mind. That's a big concept for both society, individual, and a nation. The resolve. It's a resolve that you damage. And Surah Feel, the most powerful lesson so far in this is that how the resolve was damaged before the act of attack. Even before the birds came, right? The resolve was damaged. And that was intervention.
The resolve is probably, I think it's not the resolve. Resolve would be like the resolve of, if you say Abraha's resolve, it's essentially in his mind. It's his design. I mean, the people that are with him, the 60,000 army, the elephant, they don't have a plot. They're just there for the money. They're there for the victory. They're there for the glory of the event or witnessing it. It's like an easy win situation for them. The guide is the plot. The overall plan is Abraha's. Is maybe some of the generals or advisors or vassals of his have a part in it, but essentially it's his grand plan. And the unraveling of it is in his mind. So the unraveling of the plot is in his mind. So once it's unraveled, you can't you can't have plan B. Like, what's his plan B? Because the plot is unraveling because you can't nib it, as they say. Was it nib it? Like to struggle
हाँ
or to fight
ये
with
हाँ
God.
अब never या अल्लाह के प्लान से कैसे निपटेंगे आप यानी आप निपट ही नहीं सकते
In English, there's no word. Is there a word for that? That's the
Uh,
word that came to my mind.
you can't yeah I
Because
don't
nibt
know.
has this kind of hakarat, doesn't it?
Yeah it's yeah it's you, over and done with. You can't do with it.
Mm.
You can't do with.
So my point is,
what-
like, if it was a military situation, like if it was the Meccans against Abraha, then he would have plan B, because he'd say,
Mm,
okay,
mm.
the elephant's not going, I'm just going to slaughter the elephant, eat his meat, and we're going to go back and kill. But the problem is, the Meccan, Abdul Muttalib's told him, we're going to leave the city, you can take it. Because he's saying, we're off, give my camels, we need some meat and milk. We want to have like a camel burger or whatever, whatever they used to have. Bread and meat, and milk. Alas, we just want to eat. And he's probably thinking, like, these Bedouins or these, tribal leaders just think about their stomach.
Mm.
But then he, obviously, when he left and said, the house has a lord that will protect it, the plot is at that point not unraveled. It's just a seed of doubt.
Mm,
But the
mm,
proof of the doubt is the elephant.
mm.
And once that happens, then he's thinking, okay, plot B, okay, I know I'm dealing with God now, and I worship God, so I think that's it. It's like they don't even attempt to encroach upon the haram at that point. So the unraveling, I think the thing that people forget about is once you have a psychological defeat, you can't really have victory. Once you have a demoralized army, you can't have defeat. I mean, you can't have victory. It's just not possible.
Mm, mm, mm.
So a more demoralized leader, that's worse. I mean, you can talk about where the trenches in the First World War, where people were demoralized and they were gangrene and there was disease and death, and it was horrible. I mean, a horrible human situation. The West is still not recovered from that experience in terms of it kicked the idea of God out of their mind, because they thought, how can, and the funny thing is they did it themselves. It's not as if God put them into trenches. They decided to go to war over money. So it's like a very strange situation. You blame God for something you did yourself. Like you did it, you created the situation yourself, and you blame God. But in this situation, this is Abraha and his plot and his plan and his mischievous way. And there's the fact that now he has proof that he won't be successful. And it's that psychological defeat that I think lies at the core of so many of problems nowadays, where people just accept defeat or accept that this is the way it is and it can't change. And these are the walls within which I live, not physically, but almost like psychologically, there's no break. Like a person in a prison has walls. The moment they're out, they should be free. But there's certain studies that show that it creates this regimented idea within the prisoner. When they leave, it's as if they cannot integrate into society, which is why they have all these initiatives to reintroduce prisoners into society, to reintegrate them, because their mind is almost as if it cannot go beyond the boundaries of the jail that they've just left. And that restriction, and that, that's why, in Islamic law, there was never really a concept of prison as such. There was never really a prison, a sense of prison. There was aqubat, there was immediate punishments which were done and dusted very quickly, financial or physical, and they were done, and that was it. And you were left to be free. So the prisons are, I mean, Michel Foucault has, French, crazy theorist, but he talked about power. And one of the ways he talked about it was the prison system, the way that the prisons break the resolve of the human being. And I think this is the pivotal thing. It's about how, which brings in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's then the psychological defeat, which then is, if you think of the application of this in public life, private life, civilizations and individuals, it's probably, I would say, one of the most oft present factors in success or failure in a human being or in a culture. And that's like, if you think Salafin, you would never think
a little bit stuck in this concept of breaking the resolve, right? And
no, it's not. This is not breaking resolve. Breaking resolve is, I make the distinction. Breaking resolve is, it's like you're doing something and you know there's a way through, but you're not able to do it. And over a period of time, you realize you need to change tactic, or it's not going to happen. So we need to have a plan B or something. This is deep doubt in yourself, in who you are, in the way the world you thought was. So this is like existentially completely different from breaking resolve. Breaking resolve is like psychological warfare. Like in Gaza, the Gazans were given lots of things from the sky, and they were given resolve from the sky. But they're also, the Israeli government threw in leaflets, and it was there to break the resolve. Like day after day, they would have loudspeakers telling them certain things, breaking the resolve. So it was slowly trying to get them to change their mind. But this is different. This is, if you take this as a breaking resolve, you won't understand it. What happens in Surat Al-Fil is undermining your sense of the world, your sense of how the world lies, your worldview of who you are. That's deep, because once you do that, you've destroyed somebody. Like there's, as I said, you can have a person who's a shadow of themselves, and if you don't break that, they're not.
So conversely, it is very important to have a worldview, and well-informed worldview.
I wouldn't say well-informed, just have a worldview, and have, like, Tawheed is a worldview. Like nothing will harm you or benefit you except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's dhikr. Like the worldview, if you want me to tell you worldview, Islamic worldview, it's la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. That's like, you can't get a better worldview, because it's not just dhikr, which is la ilaha illallah. There's no God, in other words, a deity who created and is worshipped except Allah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim, which is a dhikr the Prophet used to prescribe to the companions. Means there's no power to move, and no la hawl is like this, no power to move, and no real intrinsic mover in creation except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the great, the high. And that's a worldview, because the moment somebody says no, like the economy, GDP, military might, nuclear arsenal, boots on the ground, ICE in America, the kind of internal immigration office, or that's power. You say la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Like that's a worldview. If you crush that, you've crushed Muslims.
But having the worldview, and then also mastata'tu, so you have to gather the arsenal. You have to gather.
Yeah, that comes later.
Yeah.
Okay. So that comes later. But that's the thing here is the way and the mindset and psychology and the conviction. The conviction, if you don't have it, there's no point doing mastata'tum. Ribat al-khayl, as the Quran says, get ready whatever you have of the horse cavalry. There's no point having that if you don't have the conviction. Like Khalid bin Walid, if you look at famous examples, like the thing about him was he had the conviction, and that just got him everything, which is why Sayyidina Umar had to depose him from the head of the army of the Muslims, because his resolve was so strong that it just made everybody kind of quite lazy, because they thought, okay, we don't really have to prepare. And he knew that after Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid passed away, you'll have to go back to people that have some conviction and not complete conviction. It's interesting, Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, some of the scholars said that his conviction came not the fact that he was just a Muslim, or he had, the worldview of la ilaha illallah, or la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. It's when he heard the Prophet said to him, or about him, he heard it said about him in the Battle of Mu'tah, that when the Prophet ﷺ sent an army, and the Abdullah ibn Rawaha was killed, and a lot of the great companions were killed. And in the end, Ja'far radiallahu anhu was killed. And who else was it? Zayd bin Haritha radiallahu anhu, 3, very famous. And then the Prophet said, فَأَخَذَ الرَّايَ سَيْفٌ مِّن سُيُوفِ اللَّهِ. And then the banner of the army was taken by a sword from the swords of God. Like, so Khalid didn't, the Prophet ﷺ said that before Khalid came back. The Prophet ﷺ was telling people what was happening. And he said, and then one of the swords of God took it. The moment that Khalid bin Walid realized that he was called a sword of God, he knew that he wouldn't die on the battlefield, because the Prophet had called him a sword. And it is not possible for a sword of God to be defeated in battle. Like, given that name, it's just not possible. So his conviction came from almost like his conviction in the truth of the Prophet ﷺ, deep conviction. And so that's mindset. That is, psychological invincibility. You have these boxers that walk into the ring. I think Prince, remember Prince Nassim? Is it Hamid or Prince Nassim Hamid? He used to walk into the ring, and he'd already won the victory because he'd jump in upside down, and he'd walk like a Yemenis prince. I think it's from Taiz. I think he is. The same area as Sana'a, Taiz, all the same area. He walked in and he basically kissed his bicep, and he'd won the whole mind game before the first punch. And so you'd see the opponent scared right from the beginning, because he thought that there was something behind this person's mindset. This, you say arrogance, but it was this mindset.
Yeah, but it was followed by preparation, or a preparation preceded. Yes,
but then the doubt is they don't see the preparation; they see the mindset. And then they've also seen the effect of it. So it's mind games, and it's dexterity and fortitude, which is why in this day and age it's so important that Muslims, because there's a very deep sense, I believe, that Muslims have this sense of victimhood and asking for rights and complaining, and which I understand why organizations go for that, and there's a sense that these are our rights, but with that you have to have this internal deep sense of strength, because pride. Deep down, pride and strength is a dexterity. Because the reason I'm saying that is I think genetically there's studies done, in terms of what is passed down from generation to generation. We will be a shadow of what we should be if we feed our children this sense that we should always look for rights and privileges or complaints as a reason for why we exist, or what our calling card is to any country or any society. If it's a legal right, absolutely. If it's discrimination, absolutely. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about there's a mindset that you go into the world with, and that mindset has to be this sense of we are the community of the Prophet ﷺ. Our calling card is our Prophet is Muhammad ﷺ, and he's praiseworthy on the earth and praiseworthy in the heavens. Khalas, this is who we are. And that's why people will be a thorn in the side of.
And he was a distributor of rights, not the, he distributed.
He gave.
Heart dene wala tha, lene wala.
Yes, in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet said, "Innama ana al-qasim, wallahu yu'ti." I am the one that distributes God's bounty. God is the one that gives. So it wasn't like taking taxes, taking land. It was giving rights. I mean, that's why the Islamic teachings were so revolutionary, because it was giving rights to all these people that had no rights, and they didn't have any reason to be given rights. Like women had no reason. Like there's no political, economic, social reason why the Prophet should have done that, but he did it despite all the revolts of males at the time. He did it. There was no reason for him to give the same rights that people in bondage and slavery had to free people, apart from just in warfare being in a state of bondage. In other words, a restriction in freedom. He had no reason to do that. but he did it.
Hmm.
So all these things are things that gave people, didn't take things away. He didn't take rights away, didn't take privileges away, apart from the strong and the oppressor. And that's the only thing that he did, which is why we always need to go back to that guiding principle of what the Prophet came with, and the identity that he had, the mindset that he had, and that sense of you can never be defeated. It's like,
Subhanallah.
was it not in the Parliament, what in the British Parliament, is Attlee or somebody said that how can we defeat an army that when they look down the barrel of our guns they see paradise? But the paradise it's not like stupid, like airy fairy. It's conviction. What he means is they have bigger values, higher values, and that in this day and age, I mean, if you think about it, I wouldn't want this on any culture or civilization, but the destruction of the West is going to come from the fact that it has no worldview. It has no. I mean, what is it trying to propose to people apart from entertainment and death by entertainment?
Yeah,
nothing. Just affluence, food, music, entertainment, laughter. Namut wa nahya, as the Quran says. We die and we live. It's just a cycle of organic redistribution of molecules from one animal to another. Is that what it is? That's essentially what I see. I don't see anything of value at all. And that's what, that plot is unraveling. And that's why I think Muslims should be very, very confident and stringent in adhering to their basic principles and not give in to them, get into those other ideas, because that plot is unraveling. I don't see it as something that will sustain itself. And Muslims need to be very strong as a counterbalance to that.
We leave today's reflection at this high note, inshallah, and the next session is going to be on وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلَ. Up until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.